Yes, we're going to talk today about people management, art, and science. Let me ask you a question before we get started. How did you start your first job managing people? Forget about titles. You had at least one person on your team. Were you trained before that happened? You know, I had several of those kinds of experiences, but no training. I had to kind of wing it. And to tell you the truth, I did a pretty poor job of it. Now, I was lucky. I ended up working for an extraordinary person, Joe Cacavo, and I owe him a huge debt of gratitude because Joe realized that I really didn't know what I was doing, and he took me under his wing. He mentored and he coached me. He also sent me to some training, and in fact, we even participated in one training program together. He taught me how to be a good manager by being a really great manager himself. And there were times when he had to set me straight and so forth, but he helped me lay the foundation for success. So today I want to share with you some of the things that I learned from Joe and have tried to practice ever since. First thing we'll talk about is understanding the person's capabilities, the desire to perform. I have to understand that person and what they know and what they've had experience in before I can really start to manage them well. And I need to analyze their needs and the basic components. So at the end of the program, I'm going to give you some further resources. If you've never been a manager, you'll learn the most important skills that you need to try to develop. And if you've been a manager for a while, hopefully you can identify some areas where you might want to do something a little differently to improve your overall performance even more. So let's decide, everyone, how you're going to apply what we focus on today. So as I said, you're going to analyze their needs. You're going to learn about delegation. And this is really where people's performance develops. You're going to learn about motivating them. And finally, coaching them to get them fully engaged. And with all that, then how to give that feedback and evaluation at the end of the process. I'd like to start off with this quote from Ken Blanchard. It really sums up our obligations as a manager, and Ken is a management guru that I've followed the work of for many years. This is what he said: I think people want to be magnificent. It's the job of the leader to bring out that magnificence in people and to create an environment where they feel safe and supported and ready to do the best job possible in accomplishing the key goals. Now, this responsibility, that means for us as managers, as leaders, is a sacred trust and should not be violated. The potential to guide others to their fullest potential is an honor and one that should not be taken lightly. As leaders, we hold the lives of others in our hands. These hands need to be gentle and caring and always available for support. And I think that sums it up, and that's certainly the way Joe managed me. You see, another thing he taught me is that the manager is really the bridge between the team and the folks higher up the ladder in the organization. And what does that really mean? Well, communicate the leader's message. And that means the vision, mission, values, goals, objectives, strategies, priorities. Joe had that rare gift of communicating with everyone at the appropriate level. And he helped us to see how our work helped fulfill the overall mission of the organization and understand what our priorities were. Communicate to management our accomplishments, our concerns, and make sure upper management recognizes how well we're doing. And he could talk to upper management in their language so that they understood the value of our work and what it provided for the organization. He also had that ability to speak to the project team. You see, he could break down corporate speak for us so that we could understand what upper management really needed from us and why. And more importantly, Joe acted as a shield, as a buffer from organizational politics. Every organization has them, but the team needs to be protected, and that's part of our job as that manager. And he also worked at maintaining that team spirit. And he did simple things that helped us. He often pulled us together for informal chats, or sometimes he'd have a lunch and learn. In fact, we became so obvious as a team that other people in the organization started calling us, "Oh, there goes the A team." They were pretty derisive in the way they said that. We decided to wear it as a badge of honor, and we hung a sign over the place where our cubicles were that said A team. All right, so let's get down to it. Every manager at every level, no matter what your title, has essentially 3 responsibilities: to lead, to manage, and to do. What really changes at each level of the organization is the amount of each that we're required to do. So, what is my leadership role? Being able to lead is independent of title. You can lead from any place within the organization. Let's look at what it involves. Setting direction, inspiring the team, communicating vision, mission, and values, and creating the culture. Setting direction means understanding the organization's vision, its mission, and then translating these into a mission for your team. And you do this by creating a plan to move the team forward so that it fulfills the mission, no matter how simple the plan is or how limited. Inspiring the team, we need to help motivate individuals to carry out the plan, and we do that in part by involving them in the planning itself. Communicating that vision, mission, and values. See, we're accountable for communicating vision, mission, and values to the entire team so that they're not some kind of abstract statements, pretty words on a plaque or something like that, but that they become guides for action. And finally, creating that culture. You see, the leader of the group, no matter how small the team is, where it is in the hierarchy, the leader of that team creates the culture for that team. And you do it quite often without even realizing it. Now, Joe kept us focused and engaged, and he went out of his way to build us as a team. And he did some simple things. For example, most mornings he ended up just bringing in our coffee. And we'd have a brief 5-10 minute discussion of where we were going, what we were doing for the day. He set up lunch and learn so that we could develop some new skills. And he even brought in outside experts, often professors from local colleges who were willing to come in for a free meal. But all of this helped us grow and develop. See, he created this positive oasis for the A team where we could all thrive. And that's our goal. That's our goal. Okay, so what's our management role? And managing is probably going to form the core of much of what we're doing, of what you're doing. And it's a different set of responsibilities from leading, and yet it's equally important. Managing is getting work done through others. That's the classic definition. Plan, track, results, and report. Everything begins with the plan. And we use the plan to drive the team performance. And then we track the results in some sort of concrete way, measuring them in some way. Now, measurements don't have to be complicated and sophisticated. It can be very simple, like task completed, task incomplete. And then we report to our managers on the team progress. We have to make sure our team is trained. We have to delegate and we have to coach. And the plan also gives us direction to know our team's development needs. So we have to find out what they need. And with the plan, we have our roadmap for delegation and coaching, which we're going to spend some time on, so that the team members can achieve their goals. Now, training doesn't have to mean sitting in a classroom. People can be doing exactly what you're doing today, watching and listening to a presentation on the computer. There's so many ways that we can train people today, and we have to look out and see which ones are available to us and make sure that we use them. And finally, we'll evaluate performance. And when we do all of these other things well, performance evaluation becomes an ongoing part of executing the plan. So it's not this horrible, tedious thing that we do at the end. Now, in reality, we have doing tasks also, especially during your early management jobs. Quite often you're asked to continue doing the work that you were doing before. And so we have many of those tasks to perform as well as our management tasks. Let's take a look at some of those. Some is performing that technical work. When I was assigned to be the project team lead, there was no one to take my place, so I had to continue doing my team member duties. Now, this was tough. There's no doubt about it. I really had to juggle tasks and so forth. But slowly, I was able to teach some of the other team members how to take over some of those tasks and relieve the burden on me. We all have to complete these administrative tasks. Sometimes we call them administrivia. Every job has them. Most of us don't like them. But the key is to figure out, how can I streamline these so I can minimize the time it takes to do them, so that they're not taking such a big bite out of my time for doing my other tasks. Perform staff duties. For example, people are often asked to serve on a committee or a task force or to be part of an improvement team, all of those kinds of things. And finally, all non-manager leader activities. And in many job descriptions as we read them, there's always this catch-all phrase, other duties as assigned, and it sneaks into almost every job description somewhere. So what's my overall goal? I love this. Great managers do nothing. Hey, that sounds like a great idea. Well, before you sling that hammock, this is kind of a metaphor, if you will. What we're trying to say here is that your goal is to reduce your doing activities and increase the amount of time and effort you're putting into your managing and leading. So to change the dynamic around, you need a plan. This is what Joe suggested to me, and I suggested it to others over the years, and it's really quite effective. Keep a running list of all the tasks you perform. Now, I used to just carry around an index card and jot it down. You don't have to go into great detail. You don't have to put down the exact times. From 7:43 to 7:49, I did this. No. But just list the task as you go along. And do this for 2 weeks. Now, you will find at the end of the 2 weeks, if you sit down with that list and go through and mark off, if very simply I put an L by anything that was a leading activity, you know, setting direction, inspiring the team to go there. I put an M by managing activities, and that's all the parts of getting work done through others and planning and reporting and so forth. And a D by everything that was a doing, that was a task, that was actually something that I would love to assign to a team member, but I had to do it. All right. Now I go back and I look and I see, am I doing more leading than managing? More managing than leading. More managing than doing. More leading than doing. More doing than leading or managing. And I now see exactly where I am and where I need to put my energy if I want to change around those dynamics. And usually we've got a lot more doing activities on there than we would like to have. So that's again where I'm going to start. And as said before, streamlining and delegating. And we'll talk about the delegating in just a few minutes. The whole point is to give myself more time to manage and to lead. Being accountable is probably one of the hardest things that we have to learn. I need to be accountable not only for myself, but I'm accountable for my team. My success is their success. Their success is my success. But I don't get to play the blame game. If things don't go well, I can't say, oh, well, the team screwed up. Oh, Sam there screwed up. Mary made a mistake. No. I have to own that and be totally accountable to my management and above. This is one of the most difficult parts because it kind of goes against our natural inclination. So the first thing I need to do is I need to sit down and make a list of all the things that I'm accountable for and make sure they're all on my plan. And I need to have this discussion, take my plan and go through it with my manager and make sure that I understand completely what my team and I are accountable for. And then what are the consequences for me and the team? What are the positives and negative consequences? What happens when the team accomplishes what we set out to do and I accomplish what I set out to do? What happens when we don't accomplish it? What are the consequences going to be? And let's talk about the fact that, of course, none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes. So when I make a mistake, I don't get to whine about it. My daughter happens to live in England, and the Brits have a wonderful expression called whinging. And whinging is kind of like whining on steroids, so no whinging. And I heard this other one on TV one day, and I thought this is the best sum up of it. When you mess up, fess up. When you make those mistakes, own the mistakes, then go in and look at, okay, how did I end up making this mistake? Or how did the team member end up making this mistake? And by the way, if the team member is the one who made the big mistake, where am I in all this? What part did I play? Is there something I didn't go over with them or something I didn't train them about? Or is it something outside our control that we didn't think about? Some risk we didn't account for? What's the root cause at the end of the day? Because I need to find that root cause and I need to do something about it. If I'm going to be a good manager, I must continuously improve everything I do. Dr. Deming was the great guru of quality, and he put forth this notion in a very simple formula: plan, do, check, act. And continuous improvement of everything you're doing is the most important contributor to your overall success. So a plan. What am I going to do? I do it, I follow my plan. Then I check. I figure out some way to measure each of those things that I've done. and see how close I've come to achieving my goal. And then I act. Now, if what we were measuring, we met the goal, then decide, okay, am I going to continue on, or should I set a more robust goal? If we miss the goal, then I have to go out, look for that root cause, and fix it. And then I go back through the cycle again. That's why it's depicted as a circle, because I'm continuously looking to improve everything I do, bit by bit. So making this transition from being a team member to being a team manager, or to a higher level of management, this is our challenge and what we're going to be digging down into some details of in just a minute. It requires me reflecting and thinking about myself and how I'm doing, making that transition, which they make me uncomfortable. Learning to live with uncomfortability is part of becoming a better manager. So if we were promoted, as many of us were, because we were good at what we were doing before, it's like we're starting all over again at the bottom of the ladder. And I need to focus then on what new skills do I need to develop? What do I need to do differently if I'm going to get better and better at what I'm doing? Now, not too long after you finish this webinar, and I would suggest don't wait more than a day, sit down and make a list of the strengths you bring to managing, to whatever your position is, whatever title you have. What are the strengths and talents that you have that you're bringing to this position? And what are your challenges? Where are the areas where you still need to make some improvements and learn some more things? This becomes the basis for your own continuous improvement plan. So what are some of the specific things you're going to do to maximize those strengths and minimize those challenges? I'm serious, if without a plan, the likelihood that you'll make changes consciously over the next few months or so, slim to none. So make a plan. Now, I want to talk about one more thing, avoiding the water cooler. I call it the dark side of management. Now, offices don't necessarily have water coolers anymore, but I use it as the metaphor for wherever you gather with other your peers and other managers and so forth. And our tendency is to gossip. And we must kind of get out of that mode. I have to be very selective about who I'm going to share my challenges with and who I'm going to ask for advice. Is that person an expert with a proven track record? Gossip, as I said, is going to get us nowhere. And we have a human tendency. We're more likely to choose people who commiserate with us and agree with us and reinforce our worst instincts. So find people who will tell you the truth, people who will challenge you. And I mean challenge you so that you can grow and develop. Okay, we're finally ready to jump into the basics of good management. And I call this the success trifecta, 3 elements: delegation, motivation, and coaching. And these are the fundamentals, and we're going to go into each of them in great detail. First thing, of course, is I've got to have a plan. We've talked about that so far. And I want to push you hard today to make sure that's a written plan with input from your team and, of course, from your boss. Base your plan on your manager's plan. Now, that makes it pretty easy. However, sometimes we are in a situation where the manager doesn't have a plan for whatever reason. So, look out at all the assignments that you've been given, all the tasks that you've been asked to do, and kind of then work backwards, kind of re-engineer the plan from those things. Okay, these are the things I've been asked to do. What are the objectives or goals that they're serving? And again, review it with your team, ask them for input, and of course then review it with your boss. Now, these elements we have here, the goals, the objectives, the metrics, how we're going to measure these things, the specific acts or actions or tasks or tactics, who's going to do what, how we're going to measure it, what our overall target is for that thing, when it's going to be done. These are the basic elements that need to be part of your plan. If your company has a nice format for doing plans, you're going to use that. And if not, well, develop your own. And again, you can do it in a spreadsheet or even a Word table, depending on how simple or complex your plan has to be. Don't get bogged down in these mechanics or worrying about software support. Keep it simple, because this is a practical, living tool that you're going to use, because you're going to be changing things as you go along because of what you encounter and what happens. But without a plan, you're always, always, always at the mercy of circumstances. Now, let's really dive into delegation. That's the thing we're going to look at in the greatest depth today. And to do that, we're going to delegate this team plan down to the team members. So when your plan is acceptable to your manager and you and your team have worked on it, now you're going to develop a more detailed plan. This is called cascading, and you're going to cascade it to each individual team member. You're now ready to delegate different portions of the plan to each individual. And they'll have specific tasks on the plan. By the way, so will you. Right? Some of these activities you're still going to be doing. So the question always comes up, why should we delegate? Well, there are two main reasons. One is to delegate to help your team members improve. It's for their development. And this is actually how we get work done through others. And the outcome of that, when we really delegate and kind of get far into this, then we can spend more time leading and managing. And all of this leads us to being more effective, more efficient. So we develop individual action plans with each person. And this is how we assure the overall plan results. And in the process, we're training and cross-training
4. All right. Great. Okay, here we go. Understanding the team members' level of understanding and motivation, and if they're ready for the task we're delegating. One of the things we have to do is diagnose what the team member needs to be successful. And this is going to help you tailor your management approach and style to that person's individual needs. One size doesn't fit all. Sometimes an individual may have a lot of knowledge and experience in one area, but not much at all in another. So we can't manage them the same way. Maybe the person is highly motivated but doesn't have much of a background. Maybe the person needs to be helped to pull out from their past experiences things that we could apply to the new situation. Each situation really needs different approaches. Next slide, please. So, the question becomes, how easy or hard is it going to be for the person to carry out the assignment and do what needs to be done? What do they need from you? Do they need some training? Will they need some extra coaching? Do they need a little more motivation or encouragement? See, figure out what they actually need. That's what an effective manager does. So it requires you to then give them just the amount of information and support they need. Not too much, not too little. We don't want to be helicopters hanging over them and over-managing them, and we don't want to leave them out there floundering on their own, being an under-manager. Next. So let's go through linking the delegation to the team's plan, and that's always the most important thing. It assumes we've got that plan in place. So, and we want to make sure that we've involved the team members in creating that plan. And then we need to empower them to do a good job. Now, empowerment is not a fancy word that we put out there. It's giving them the tools they need to get the job done. For example, suppose the person needs to get information from another department. I mean, they can go over there and ask them, but sometimes the other department people are busy and they don't see it as a priority. I need to smooth the way. I need to call my counterpart over there, tell them that Sam is coming over, they're going to be asking you for this, that, and the other, and please help them do it. So I smooth the way. I give them the tools they need to get the job done. Thinking about setting direction for the future. I need to have had some conversations. I need to know, what is this individual's ambition? Where are they going? Because that can help me explain to that person, how is this job going to help you achieve your goals? Right? Remember, it's all about them. Now, the planning and delegation helps set expectations day to day. And that's because we've based everything on the plan. They know where they're going, what's expected of them. The best results are always going to come anytime I can match the team members' talents to the job at hand. And I look to do that as often as I can. Not 100%, it's not going to happen. But look for ways in which you can use each individual's talents. And finally, recognize results. A simple thank you with a concrete description of why the work was good is incredibly powerful and reinforces it. Let me give you an example. If I say to you, Mary, I like the way you developed that report. I like the fact that it had a cover page with just a few bullet points that pulled out the important things. And then a little bit of narrative, and then it was followed by those great graphs you put together at the end that really made everything concrete. Thanks so much for doing that. You see how that helps? This is a lot more than good job. No, now the person knows exactly what was good about it and can more easily follow on and do that on the next assignment. Next, let's look at the guidelines for delegation. Match the person to the task, make time for learning, set new priorities, and provide objectives. So match the person and the task means don't give an assignment with a hard, immediate deadline approaching to somebody who's totally inexperienced. You've simply set them up for failure. Make time for learning. The person may be on a learning curve for this. Remember, if it's something they haven't done in the past. And so you need to build that time in to the time frame for the task, as well as put in some time for the learning and for the support they may need. Setting new priorities. Most people have more than one assignment. It's your job as their manager to set the priorities of what needs to be done first, second, and third, based on the plan you've put together. And finally, provide some concrete objectives so that the person understands how this task is going to be measured and what the due dates are, so that it's 100% clear to them. Next. All right, these are the six basic steps. Ask for the plan, review the plan, ask questions, finalize the plan, make a schedule for review, and review progress. So ask the person to do a preliminary plan on their own. And they may say, well, you know, I've never done this before. And I say, give it your best shot. See what you can figure out. Because this helps both of you understand how much they really understand or know about this. And that's going to tell you how much support and information you're going to need to provide. Now, when they come back with their plan, don't jump in and start telling them, well, no, you said this and it should be that and this is wrong. No. They'll never learn anything except to really depend 100% on you. No, ask questions. For example, Tom, help me understand why you chose this approach. What do you think would happen if this happened? Remember, you're stimulating the person to think. You hire these people for their brains, and that's what you've got to stimulate. Once you've gone through this, and again, for a bigger plan, it'll take several iterations. For a small plan, it can probably be done in one meeting. But you finalize the plan, and you build into that plan a schedule for review. And once again, how often do you review? It depends. Depends on the person, the urgency of the task, the scrutiny that you'll be under, and so forth. Some things need to be reviewed every day. You're going to be called about it every day at noon, and you better have an answer. Other things, no. Quarterly is good enough. Depends on what is important in this particular task. And finally, review progress, and you build these progress points into the plan for whatever you've assigned to them. And this gives you time to review how well they've done, and of course, it helps them build for the next assignment. Next. All right, here's some more guidelines. The team member's plan has the tasks, the task results, the targets, due dates, and status details. And the plan should be as simple as possible and contain the information at the level of detail the person needs to carry out the work. If they've done it several times, a high-level writing of the task is fine. If it's not the first time and they're going to have to go step by step, then you put that they put that detail in there. And the team member completes the status update and delivers it to you before the review session. Why? So that you as the manager can develop your questions that are going to help the person think through where there may be some gaps in their plan. Next, more delegation guidelines. Provide the plan format, and this again is whatever planning format that you guys like to use. Reinforce being proactive. As soon as results start off track, you want to encourage people to come and inform you. And by the way, when they come into your office and you say, we're having this problem, this has happened, we're not going to meet our deadline, do not blow up. I know sometimes it's hard, but seriously, the first thing out of your mouth should be, thank you. And I mean this sincerely, not sarcastically. Thank you for coming and letting me know so that we can deal with it. You want to celebrate tasks and reward results. You want to say, good, we finished this task, this is terrific. And of course, you want to make sure that there's rewards for getting the good results. And again, this can be simple. One of the things that Joe used to do is, every 2 or 3 weeks when we really hit some big deadlines, he'd bring in some pizza on Friday afternoon and we'd have a little pizza party. Something simple. But let people know that you are pleased with the results and that you're recognizing them. At the end, we always conduct a lessons learned, and we're going to go into a little detail on that in just a moment. And finally, repeat with more challenging tasks. This is where we are developing that person and his or her capabilities to do more and more. And we're going to discuss this further when we get to the section on coaching. So let's look at that lessons learned bit. This is probably the most important thing of any assignment. And I mean that. Every time you review the progress against the plan, this is every time, stop and write down the lessons learned. Have the person write them down. What did they actually learn from doing this? What could they apply the next in the next assignment? What do they want to do more of, less of, the same? And the person writes that down, and then at your next team meeting, you share those lessons learned among the team members so that we spread the knowledge and even end up preventing some problems. That's, of course, always a goal. Next slide. All right, here's the major rule. No dumping. And dumping is everything but following the delegation plan. Next slide. For example, if you ignore these guidelines we've gone through, you're probably dumping. If we say do it all when they have many tasks instead of prioritizing the tasks for them. When we expect the person to do it exactly the same way we would do it. I know this is going to come as a shock, but they may have a better idea. When we, of course, over and under manage performance, as we talked about, that's dumping. When we ignore the milestones or the task completion results, in other words, we let it slide. Oh, last week you didn't make this deadline. Well, wait a minute, last week, let's talk about it last week. Next. When we give an inexperienced person a major project with a deadline chiseled in stone, that's dumping. We've just set them up for failure. When we delegate only the unpleasant, repetitive, unwanted jobs, no. We have to take on some of those also. This is a lesson that Joe also taught me. When we were on those heavy deadlines and we were working late at night, Joe was right there, sleeves rolled up, working with us. He didn't expect us to do all of the unpleasant work, and he only would sit back in the office with his feet up doing the fun stuff. No. Don't give responsibility without authority. People need to have the authority to get the job done. And we've talked about this before. Don't tell people how to do everything. Help them figure out as much of it on their own as possible. And finally, don't leave the person out there struggling without guidance and coaching. Next. All right, so we've covered delegation. The second piece of that trifecta was motivation. And so when I asked Joe, I asked him one day, I said, what book should I be reading to be a better manager? And he told me, and it surprised me, he said, you need to study psychology. And I said, wait a minute, I don't want to be a shrink. No, but he told me, you need to understand what makes humans in general tick. Now, if you ever took a psych course back in college, they probably focused a lot on abnormal stuff because that's interesting and exciting. We're interested in the more boring, normal psychology of human beings because when I understand what makes people tick and then can apply it to the individual, I'm much more likely to coach them at the appropriate level. Next slide. So how do I link motivation to the team plan? Well, if you've got a good memory, you may recognize these steps as exactly the same ones we had for delegation. Involve the person in planning. That is motivational in and of itself. Empower them to do the job by giving them the tools. That's motivating. Nothing more demotivating than being in a situation where you can't get the job done because you don't have the right tools. Involve, set direction for the future. How does this assignment affect the way, what your job goals are? That's motivating in and of itself because I see, this is going to help me moving forward because I'd like to do such and such in the future. I know when I know what I'm doing day to day because we have that plan, that's motivating. And of course, anytime you're using my talents to do something and I'm honing those talents, these are the things that I do well pretty consistently. I'm always enjoying that more. And finally, recognizing those results, letting the person know that they've done a good job. And remember specifically what made it a good job. Next slide. All right. So there are things that motivate people and demotivate people. So when you're getting ready to work with a team member, think about what may motivate that person and what may demotivate them. And don't make assumptions. Write down a list and keep adding to it because remember, they may be motivated or demotivated by things that are different from you. And we could sit here all day talking about examples of when people have tried to motivate us with something that motivates them, but not us. So don't limit yourself to just what motivates you. Keep observing, reading, asking questions. I spend time watching people and seeing what they're doing, what they tend to gravitate towards. Next. We're going to talk a little bit at the very end about developing a motivational profile that helps you kind of get a handle on each different person. What interests them? What rewards their work that they seem to gravitate towards? Spend time with them. Talk with them. Informal conversation very often leads us to understand what motivates somebody. And of course, always use trial and error. You'll try something and it'll work. You'll try something and it falls flat. Observe carefully and notice their reactions to things as they go along. Next slide. So, how do we motivate people? We're going to today focus on only one particular area of motivating people. Right? We can't do justice to all of them. But we're going to look at one particular piece that I think is useful and applies across many areas. Next, we're going to look at the work of David McClelland. And he studied something he called acquired social needs. And these acquired social needs are things that we develop at different points in our lifetime. The three that he identified were achievement, power, and affiliation. So when we're talking about achievement, we're talking about accomplishing challenging goals, solving difficult problems, and improving our systems. Power is influence and control, having status, public recognition. And affiliation is developing relationships, communicating with others, creating harmony in the team. And McClelland, as he studied this, realized that at different points in our lives, we may be motivated by one of these more than the others. And we all have all three kind of floating around in there. But he said at different times, each one assumes a bigger piece of this. So let's look at the details here for just a minute. Next slide. Acquired social needs achievement. These folks are, and think about yourself, by the way, as we go through these in a little more detail. Which one of these kind of resonates more with you? And think about one person on your team, or maybe even your boss, and see, that sounds a lot like that person. Pardon me. So what is achievement? Well, here provide challenging, interesting work. These are the folks that love a challenge. They bring it on. A friend of mine who was in sales, they used to bring her in when the whole project was going south. They called her the jaws of life. She would somehow rescue that thing and bring it back to life. She loved a big challenge. If it wasn't a big challenge, she wasn't so interested. Very often people motivated primarily by achievement like to take on the leadership role in the team because it gives them more of an opportunity to solve tough problems and involve other people. When it comes to doing their own work, they like to be left alone. They like the autonomy to go out and get the results they need. And they love leading improvement efforts. So think about yourself. Think about that team member. Is achievement the primary motivator? Next. The acquired social need of power. These people thrive on having titles and perks. They like that member of the month thing that some companies have, where they put your picture and bio up on the board, or you get a special parking place. They'll often accept a new title very willingly. They love leadership opportunities also because they love to be in charge of the team. They're always looking for advancement opportunities. They're always looking to move up the ladder, and they almost always require public recognition. When we go back to the previous one, and we're talking about people primarily motivated by achievement, they vary, and so you have to find out from them, do they want public recognition or private recognition? And finally, affiliation. These people, they're always the ones that step forward and coordinate the social events. 90 times out of 100, those are the ones who volunteer or who think them up in the first place. They love working with clients. They love working on a team. They love being able to mediate, to help people communicate better, to get along better. If there's heavy disagreement, among the team members, they tend to feel a little uncomfortable, and they'll often step in and try to get people to work together more cooperatively. And they love team building. You cannot do too much team building with these folks. And again, they like their recognition, public or private, depending on them, and they're more likely to say, well, it was really a team effort. So thinking about those three social needs of achievement, power, and affiliation, this will give you a clue going forward about how to motivate people because it matches their prime motivator. Next, when we look at internal motivators and external motivators, we say, well, which is really more powerful? Well, in reality, we really don't ever motivate another person. Humans are self-motivated. But as managers, it's our job to set up the conditions where the person can be motivated. We have to find the conditions and rewards that trigger the internal motivators. External motivators may do this, especially if they hit on one of those things we've talked about. And when we try to coerce people, we'll often get compliance, but we won't necessarily get motivation. Next, when we're talking about motivation, we have to remember each person is unique. Did I say this before? One size doesn't fit all. So what works for one person doesn't work for another. We can't assume the person likes the same things I do. So I have to find out what really motivates that person. Next. So how do I figure this out? How do I find out what motivates the other person? Well, here's some simple steps. Informal discussions, talking about outside activities, their opinions, and so forth. That kind of informal conversation that we have with people all the time, and we're not talking about prying into their private lives and all of that sort of thing. But people are often willing and ready to talk about things that interest them. And this gives us some clues into what's interesting to them and what may be motivational. Then I observe a lot. I look, what do they volunteer for? What do they seem to gravitate towards? What seems to be most interesting to them? And of course, we said before, trial and error. We try it, we see the reaction. Of course, you can always ask them, but that doesn't necessarily get you the right answer. But we try and see. So good luck with your motivating people. Next. And we suggest that you develop a motivational profile for each person. And here we've included some things that we didn't talk about today, looking at Maslow's stages of development or the hygiene factors. We're not talking about those today, but acquired social needs. You want to try to figure out what that is for each person. And then your observations, that what you've seen them drawn towards, and then what you do, your action and its result. So developing, and I would start with just one person and kind of work through the profile with them, try to see what motivates them. Next. So at the end of the day, it's all about recognizing and rewarding good performance. Now, you may not be able to provide the raises and promotions, the big ticket items, but you can use the positive reinforcement matched to the person's motivational needs, and this goes a long way. For example, Joe understood that at the time I was working for him, achievement was my main driver. So he took me along to meetings and help, and then debrief them with me and asked me a lot of questions to help me figure out what was going on in that meeting and so forth. And so he was building me up so that I could handle those on my own. Now, I have to tell you one quick story. I had a person who worked for me at one time, and when you walked by where her cubicle was, it looked like the main deck of the Enterprise. It was full of Star Trek memorabilia. So she had done a huge, huge project and really did a fabulous job on it. And I wanted to reward her some way. Well, the Star Trek convention was coming to our city at that time. I gave her 2 tickets. When I gave her those 2 tickets, the smile on her face told the whole story. Yes, I had picked the right motivator, the right reward. And about a month later, I was at the Star Trek convention because my daughter was a big Trekkie. I'm walking down the aisle, and I see a Klingon coming towards me in full battle regalia. Something was familiar. It was her. And she, again, was so excited that she'd gotten tickets to come to the thing. Now, the tickets didn't really cost me that much, and it, though, was the perfect reward. I could have probably asked her to do anything, and she would have. So look for those home runs. What motivates the other person? Next, we're going to talk now about coaching. We're going to pull together the fact that coaching combines both delegation and motivation. Coaching coaching nurtures good performance. And that's what we want to really focus on. And next, here comes that familiar link again. How do I link coaching to the leader's plan? I involve them in planning, right? Because remember, we're combining now delegation and motivation. I empower them to do the job by giving them the tools they need. We set directions for their future, what's going to help them move forward. Set expectations day to day so people know what's expected of them. Use their talents whenever necessary, and of course always, as we've just talked about, recognize results. Next. Okay, so let's look at coaching goals. There's essentially 3 big ones. Stimulate thinking, encourage the team member to discover, and assure the team member is going to be successful. Okay, the first one is the most important. I said this before, I'll say it again. We hire people for their brains, and we need to keep stimulating them to think. And I underline this one because it's the most important, and it's the one we're most likely to forget. Because we get too busy and we say, well, I'll just tell them what to do, and then they'll go do it. That may be fine, but guess what? They won't learn anything that way. Or if they learn anything, hey, just wait. The boss will tell you what to do anyway, so you don't have to really figure it out for yourself. So I need to stimulate them, and I need to figure out what do we need the person to do. And then we're going to look at their progress against the plan and then figure out what's the most effective behavior or action they need to take. And then we're going to encourage them to discover, as we said, okay, here are the results of the plan. What needs to be done? How are you going to solve this particular problem? What did you learn from this experience to improve? These familiar themes we've been talking about. And we want to assure that the team member owns the behavior, owns the results, and then plans for the next step. And, of course, has some guidance from me as the team leader. And that owning of the behavior and results, remember, we said before, no whining, no whinging, no blame game. No, own the results. Okay, if they weren't where we wanted them to be, what do we need to do to get back on track? Next. So we have to prepare for coaching, and we can't just wing it. Coaching requires some serious preparation, and if we fail to plan, better plan to fail. So what do we do? Remember, they're going to give me that little report of their status and results. I'm going to prepare my questions in advance. Now, there's some questions that I'm always going to have to ask, and I'm constantly adding to that list. I want to avoid judgment. It's very easy, especially if they're way off track or they didn't get done what I needed done, that I'm going to feel angry. I'm going to feel upset. But I have to kind of calm myself down before I go into the coaching session. I want to test out my theories about what's motivating to them, what's interesting. And I want to have realistic expectations of humans. I'm not going to ask them to do things that can't be done. As I said before, beware of my feelings. Don't let them run the meeting. I want to listen more than I talk. And of course, I want to praise them and motivate them. Listen, even when people have failed to get everything done, they've probably done some things or accomplished some things. So I wanted to pull those out and notice them and say, yes, here's where you did a good job and this is why it was a good job. I want to be a role model. I said at the beginning that I learned to be a good manager by watching Joe and the way Joe behaved. And it was that role model role that you have to take on to constantly improve and do better. Next. So here are the steps. We kind of go up from the bottom. Step 1, the team member runs the coaching session. Now, this may be shocking, but this is essential. Remember, we want them to own that plan. We want them to own those results. And so what do? They review the plan elements. They walk through it with us, tell us what their results are, and slowly we teach them to explain results that aren't where they need to be and what they're doing about it or what the root cause is or where they may need some help. The team leader asks probing questions. We've talked a lot about this. Team leader uses concrete observations, and we say, you know, I see that when you took on this and that happened. The team leader then sets new expectations. Okay, here's the next goal, here's the next deadline. And then the team member goes back and modifies the plan if that's what's necessary. Next. So as we review the results, they're either on track or off track. Now, if they're on track, they have two choices. They can continue, or they may want to up the ante a little bit and improve. Again, it's a discussion you have. If they're off track, what are the root causes? They need to find those root causes and then adjust and modify the plan. So you want to praise all the accomplishments concretely and specifically, and then also compliment them on their efforts to get back on track. Next. So how do we improve performance? Well, you have to plan the next steps, revisit our plan periodically, decide how we're going to measure progress. Again, this is their overall development plan. And look at the logistics, see if we're still on track. I always talk about those lessons learned and reinforce achievement. None of this works without a plan which drives delegation and understanding of each person's motivation. Right? That's how we go about improving performance. Next. Now there's some basic do's and don'ts. Do describe specific behavior the person has. When you walked into the office yesterday and slammed your briefcase down on the table and growled at people when they said, hello, have a nice day, what's so good about it? That upset the office. Let's talk about that. Don't criticize the person. Oh, you're always so angry. That doesn't help me. I don't know what to do with it. First, explain to me what behaviors I was performing. Don't compare results. Do compare results to the plan. Don't send conflicting messages. Do provide the pluses and the minuses. Don't use aggressive speech. And watch your tone and your body language here. Do draw out the consequences. Don't play the blame game. Do ask for suggestions, but don't tell the person how to do the work. Now, sometimes you're going to have to do some of that, but most of the time you want to see how much can they figure out on their own. Do ask for a new plan. Don't bring up the past. You always mess this up. You always, no, that isn't useful, and it only gets the other person into a negative, reactive mode, and then you've lost them anyway. Do express confidence that they're going to be able to figure this out and do better. Don't forget to ask for improvement. Do provide feedback quickly. Don't wait for the annual performance evaluation. It is totally useless to say to someone, 6 months ago, you screwed something up. Hey, the time to tell me? 6 months ago when it happened, when I can do something about it, or at least learn from it. So provide quick feedback as a way of helping the person improve. Next. Ineffective coaching, you can recognize it right away. If the only time you get together is when there's a problem, that means the person begins to tune out. When there's no planning, we've already said this, fail to plan, plan to fail. The wrong level of information and motivation. In other words, either being a helicopter or leaving them out on their own. Give them the right amount. Never giving positive feedback. I was at a plant once, and I asked the fellow how he was doing and if he got regular feedback, and his reaction was, I don't know. I haven't gotten fired yet. So, an open door policy, I put on the ineffective coaching list because it doesn't really help me. And if my door is always open, I'm constantly being interrupted. Some people never come through that door. And finally, just doing it on the fly in the hallway. So coaching has to be built in to your schedule. Next. All right. You want to evaluate performance. And you remember, you set these objectives at the beginning of the year. You coach the person on a regular basis. You're constantly reviewing their performance. And this helps them develop their skills, build on their talents. You're getting obstacles out of the way. In the best companies, they do this pretty much on a quarterly basis as well as the annual. And if you've been planning, delegating, motivating, and coaching all along, gathering your lessons learned, and you've essentially been evaluating performance all along. And why is that important? Next. No surprises. The point is you want to have no surprises. The person always knows how well he or she is doing. Next, so we can kind of sum it up to have plan, delegate, motivate, coach, and you end up with no surprises. Next. One of the other things that most great managers do is that they find a mentor or a coach. And we've been talking a lot about my great boss, Joe Cacavo. Now, he was not my only mentor. I've had other mentors over the years, and I want to suggest that you find them. Now, you may luck out and have a great boss, and that can be the person. Some companies have formal mentoring programs.